We are finally here. I've actually seen Dune Part 2, and honestly, this has been one of my most anticipated movies for the last couple of years. Because, I every year get excited for movies that are coming out based on like what I know from them, like who's attached to it and whatnot. But with Dune, like I really like the book. I love the first movie, and I just was looking forward to the potential that was Dune 2. Of course, you never really know if it's actually going to work, but considering it's the same cast and crew as the first movie, it should be good, right? And yeah, like I honestly think, like I'm a Star Wars channel, and my most anticipated movie in the last couple of years was probably The Rise of Skywalker. It was really highly anticipated by me, but where that movie turned out to be not that good, and I was quite disappointed with it actually. Dune Part 2 lived up to all my expectations and more, I feel. I'll quickly say if you haven't seen my review for part one, you might want to check that out first so that you know what my thoughts were going into part two, kind of. And I will also say this is a spoiler free video. If you haven't seen the movie, you can watch my review, get a bit of an idea of what you're in for. Because also, what I'm going to discuss right now is for the people who have read the book and haven't seen the movie and they're like, well, what about certain things? I'm actually going to address that. So if you have read the book, and you want to know is Aaliyah in this or anything, I'll mention that at some point. So just keep watching. So in my review for the first one, I already mentioned that I thought the screenplay was so excellent, and it again goes for the second movie. What is so good about the screenplay is that it is able to just explain this entire crazy universe that's called Dune, which is really broad, has so many things in it because the book is huge and it has so many more sequel books, and it's just able to present it in a very easy to understand way. My girlfriend has never read a single Dune book, doesn't really know anything about the universe, and her introduction to Dune was the 2021 movie. And she was able to understand everything perfectly in that movie and again in this movie. And like, even if it has some weird and complex shit in it, fine. It's easy to understand, honestly. And that's why I'm so impressed by that. The screenplay is able to adapt a lot of parts from the book quite accurately, but also it knows when to cut certain things out. This might upset a couple of people because, yeah, they cut out, for example, some characters. I personally don't think you really miss it. Some people might just be bitchy because they're too attached to those characters, but I'm like, yeah, the fact that Paul and Chani had a kid and then died instantly after because was killed by Harkonnen agents, it doesn't really matter. You can easily cut that out of the movie. You will not notice it. So that's fine. And I think that if you have read the book, there are a lot of things in this movie where still, the themes and the ideas of everything in the book is still coming forward. But what I also am just really impressed by is like the dialogue between characters where they're able to subtly explain certain things about this universe without it feeling like exposition and feeling like they're overly explaining everything, which is something that the old movie has a big issue with because it overly explains everything. I am just amazed by that. I am so happy that Denis Villeneuve was able to really make this movie his own because with a lot of his other movies, he doesn't really write the screenplay. But this one he does, and he was just able to write the dialogue for the characters, and it feels so natural. It feels like these are real people talking to one another, and I fully believe everything that I'm seeing because it's so well written. So for the people who have read the book, they were wondering, a lot of people, myself included, were wondering, is Aaliyah in this movie at all? Paul's sister, because we didn't see her in any of the trailers or in any other thing. And everyone was just wondering, where is she? Like, is she even in the movie? I can say she is in the movie, but not in the capacity as you could expect it to be. It's not like in the old movie. It's not really like in the book, but she is in it. It's difficult to say anything without spoilers, but just know that going into this movie, Aaliyah has a very different role than she has in the book and in the old movie. So just be aware of that. Another thing that I was very much wondering about, I said that already in my review for the first one, is that there was a time jump in the book. In the book, it skips 2 years. This movie doesn't really do that. It essentially shows that time passes on Arrakis for them, that Paul does spend some time on Arrakis, but it's only a couple of months at most, not really the 2 years that I was expecting. And it doesn't really hurt the movie, I feel. It's just that is a change made that I'm okay with, but just know for people who are really attached to the book, that is something in this movie. But anyway, that's all I can say about the screenplay. I think it's brilliant, and I really love the story and the way it played out. And what I'm also just so impressed by is that the movie ends, without spoiling anything, the movie ends in a way that it sets up for the next one. The next one would be Dune Messiah. Now, Dune Messiah is a book that I've read, and I really hate it, actually. I thought it was not a good book. There were a lot of decisions that I was not a fan of, and I was like, okay, this is, if they're ever going to make a movie based off this, then I have worries. But based on certain changes that they made in this movie compared to the book and set up for the next one, I think that it actually can be a really good movie, because Dune Messiah has potential to be good. It's just, as is, the book to me doesn't really work, but I do think it can actually be really good if they make it into a movie. So I'm actually very excited for a next movie, because this Dune Part 2 definitely sets up for a Part 3. This will become a trilogy, and Villeneuve has said as much, that he wants to do 3 movies. So please, give me more. I cannot wait for it. Now, usually I would say, it goes without saying that technically this movie is amazing. However, considering the movies that come out these days, like some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies or the DC movies or any kind of movie that has a big budget and, a whole lot of action and whatnot, I am just so impressed by the fact that Villeneuve is able to use everything perfectly. The visual effects, the way that the movie just looks overall, the cinematography is great, sets, costume, makeup, and hair, all that kind of stuff. You can really notice the attention to detail that he puts into it to craft a movie where he's like, I don't want to dumb it down for the people watching this movie. I want to pay respect to what it is, to what it should be. And therefore, you get an awesome, epic, beautiful movie where I can't recognize the CGI like in a whole lot of other movies. And I am just completely into this universe. And that is one of the things that I also love about Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Just the fact that these movies are able to transport me into another universe and make me completely forget about my own universe with whatever kind of shitty thing I have going on in my own life. I just love that. And that is something that is just credit to the filmmakers, that to make it look and sound like an actual place, even though it's 8,000 years into the future. It's just so awesome. And also Hans Zimmer's score. Again, Hans Zimmer just knocks it out of the park. And I think that actually there's a theme for Paul and Chani. It gets played a lot because Paul and Chani, of course, spend a lot of time in this movie. That theme is going to be played for years, and people are really going to stick with it because it's a really good theme. So in terms of technical nominations at the Oscars, this movie is good. But one thing that I really hope the Oscars do next year is they also give some credit to some of the acting performances, because the acting already in the first movie was very good, but in the second one, it's even better, I feel. I feel that, for example, Austin Butler as Fate Rauda, completely new character that if you haven't read the book, don't know who that is. But if you read it, it's like, oh, I was really looking forward to him, because he's a pretty important part in the book. And seeing him in this movie, it's like, you just work. It all just works. Fate Rauda is so good in this movie, and I think Austin Butler portrays him so well. In addition to Austin Butler being at it, we also have the Princess Irulan and the Emperor, played by Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken. Now, I was curious to see how they would work, and they work. That's all I can say, really. I don't think they were particularly great, and I think Florence Pugh can actually deliver a great performance, and Walken is just a bit old to really care still about really performing well. But, it works. For what their role is, it works. So that's fine. But I also give credit to Zendaya and Dave Bautista, because both were already in the first movie, but didn't have that much screen time. And while I thought, it looked good from what I saw, in this movie, they get a bigger role. And I thought they were actually really good, really worked well to, make us believe what we're seeing, because Zendaya is supposed to be the love interest for Paul Atreides, played by Timothy Chalamet. And Chalamet also steps it up, because in the first one he was, a bit timid at times, but that was supposed to be the character, so I was okay with that. But in this one, he needs to step it up to that role of he is the Kwisatz Haderach, the Messiah, the Lisan al Gaib, that kind of stuff. And I think he really embodies that well. I really believe the chemistry between him and Chani. So all that really worked for me. I really loved the performances from pretty much everyone. And actually, one thing that really surprised me is that Javier Bardem as Stilgar was actually really funny. And it's not like he's cracking jokes left, right, and center, because that would feel like a kind of a cheap, jokey MCU movie. No, nothing like that. It's very much in character, but the way he does certain things just play off as funny, and it just made me laugh. And I think everyone just has a good time. It's like, funny to see him like that. So that was really cool. And I think that's really all I can say without spoiling anything about the movie. It is absolutely phenomenal. I don't really have any issues with it. I'm seeing this movie 3 times opening weekend. I already saw it twice, yesterday and today. I'm seeing it again tomorrow in a 2-part marathon with part 1 as well. So it's going to be a long day for us tomorrow in the theater, but I'm really looking forward to watching parts 1 and 2. Also, to now revisit part 1 after seeing part 2 and seeing how certain things play out differently, maybe that I see certain things that I didn't see before. Very much looking forward to it. I think, needless to say, Dune Part 2 is a 10 out of 10. It's perfection. Go see it, please. So, as I said, I have a lot more to talk about in a spoiler video. I will upload that video on Sunday, and I will really get into more details about certain things. But I just wanted to keep it easy right now, not really go into spoilers, and make sure that everyone is able to watch this movie based on this review, hopefully, without knowing much about really what's going on in the movie. Because, I really hate it when I get spoiled for things in even a trailer already sometimes. Like, I stop watching movie trailers because I'm like, yeah, no, I've seen enough. I'm going to see this movie. I'm sold. So, yeah, spoilers in another video. If you want to hear in depth what I have to say, check out my review on Sunday. But with that said, please consider subscribing to my channel. Usually I do Star Wars, of course, but at times I will do some other things like Dune, because I really love Dune, and I think it is actually quite similar to Star Wars in some ways. So Dune is definitely something that I'm going to review more in the future if we get more content, and if people want to see about that. So yeah, also please let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on Dune, and would you want to see more of Dune content on my channel? Please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments about all of that. Check me out on some of the other channels that I appear in videos sometimes. I'll link everything in the description below. Also follow me on social media. And until my next video, I will simply say, take care.